When I bought the house in Ohio, I thought I'd found peace. Now, I don't even sleep in the same room twice. Back then, though, I told myself I'd finally escaped the city grind. No more sirens at 3 a.m. No more walls so thin I could hear my neighbor arguing with her cat. Just quiet, space, and a chance to rebuild after a messy breakup that left me feeling hollow. The listing had popped up on one of those too good to be true websites. 4-bedroom colonial home in rural Ohio. Fully furnished. $68,000. I almost laughed when I saw the price, that I clicked it anyway. The pictures were perfect. Sunlight spilling across polished floors. A wraparound porch that looked like something out of a childhood dream. In the backyard, acres of untouched green fading into distant woods. The kind of place where you could start over, disappear if you wanted to. I drove down from Cleveland the following weekend, half expecting to find an empty lot or a scammer waiting with a cardboard sign. But no, the house was real. Bigger than it looked in the pictures, standing proudly at the end of a long gravel road with no other homes in sight. The paint looked fresh, the windows clear. The mailbox even had my name taped to it already. Welcome home. That should have been my first warning. The realtor was waiting on the porch, a tall, polite man in his 50s with an anxious smile. He spoke fast, kept glancing over his shoulder, like someone was timing him. When I asked about the price, he just shrugged and said the owner wanted it sold quickly. Something about relocating overseas. Lucky find. I said. He didn't laugh. Inside, the air felt still, not stale or musty like most old houses. Just waiting. Every chair was neatly in place, every picture framed straight, every lamp plugged in. It was as if someone had been living there 5 minutes ago and decided to vanish without warning. The kitchen drawers were full. Utensils, neatly folded dish towels, even a half-empty box of tea. Upstairs, the bedrooms were furnished down to the smallest detail. Beds made, closets stocked with hangers. There was even soap in the bathroom dispenser. That I should have been creeped out. Instead, I told myself I'd lucked into a fully staged house. The realtor hurried through the tour, mumbling details about the deed, insurance, and a maintenance clause I barely listened to. He made me sign 3 different documents I didn't fully read. Then he handed me the keys, 2 old-fashioned brass ones attached to a leather tag. When I reached out to shake his hand, he hesitated, then gripped mine like a man trying to get something over with. "Congratulations," he said. "It's yours now." "Now?" I asked. "You mean after closing, right?" He smiled thinly. "No, I mean now." And then he left. Fast. Like he was afraid the house might change its mind. The first few hours were peaceful. I unpacked a few boxes, played some music, even poured myself a glass of wine to toast the new chapter. Outside, the sun dipped behind the trees, and the house creaked gently as the temperature dropped. The kind of cozy creak that tells you wood and air are just adjusting. But then I noticed something strange. When I went back into the kitchen, one of the cabinet doors was slightly open. I was sure I'd closed it earlier. I didn't think much of it. Houses settle, doors shift, but as I reached to shut it, something caught my eye behind the spices. A folded piece of paper, yellowed at the edges. Taped to the inside panel. I pulled it free. The top read, in neat, faded type, "Rules of Occupancy." There were several lines below it, sentences I couldn't quite make out in the dim light. I squinted, catching fragments. "Lock the door before midnight. Do not open the basement." I frowned. Maybe it was a joke. Some previous owner's weird sense of humor. But then the house groaned again. A long, low sound that didn't quite match the wind outside. The overhead light flickered once, just enough to make my reflection in the microwave seem like it was a step closer than it should have been. I told myself I was tired, that I'd unpacked enough for one day. Still, as I walked toward the stairs, I couldn't stop thinking about that paper. Those rules, the phrasing of them felt expectant, like instructions, not suggestions. That night, I left the note on the counter, meaning to read it properly in the morning. But when I came down for coffee at sunrise, the cabinet door was shut again, and the note was gone. Transition ends with the discovery of the mysterious rules list, which vanishes by morning, teasing that the house itself may already be enforcing them. It wasn't a prank. Every rule was there for a reason. I didn't know that yet, of course. When the paper reappeared, I thought I'd just missed it somehow the night before. It was sitting on the kitchen counter when I came downstairs, crisp, perfectly centered, like someone had laid it out for me to find. That I remember laughing. Guess I've got a landlord with a sense of humor, I muttered, but when I unfolded it, the laughter stuck in my throat. The paper was older than I remembered, yellowed, frayed at the edges. The words were typed in a font I didn't recognize, each letter slightly indented, as if pressed by an old mechanical typewriter. And the smell? Not musty, not smoky, just wrong. Like paper that had been left somewhere it shouldn't have been. I read it once. Then again, the rules of I always. Lock the front door before midnight. Never open the basement door. No matter what you hear, don't talk to the man in the hallway mirror after 3 a.m. if you hear footsteps upstairs while you're downstairs. Leave immediately. Failure to comply means you belong to the house. I stared at that last line longer than I should have. The words "belong to the house" made me feel like I was being measured, weighed, belong. Who writes something like that? I sat down at the table, tracing the keys of my phone to check the time. 8:17 a.m. Sunlight spilled through the window. The world looked normal. Too normal. Maybe it was a local joke, I thought. Small town weirdness. Ohio humor. Maybe the realtor or some previous owner had made a creep list to mess with buyers. But even then, part of me didn't believe that. The list felt official. The phrasing, the tone, even the number of rules. 4, neatly spaced. Like something drafted for a ritual, not a rental. I noticed faint fingerprints on the corner of the page. Smudges that weren't mine. I poured another cup of coffee, trying to shake the chill that crept into my hands. By noon, I had convinced myself it was nothing. I taped the rules back inside the cabinet, more as a novelty than anything else. A conversation piece, maybe. Look at this creepy note that came with my house. But the silence that followed didn't feel like peace anymore. It felt like the house was waiting for something. That night, as I moved through the rooms turning off lights, I found myself glancing at the clock more often than usual. 11:30, 11:45. The words from the paper kept echoing in my mind. Always lock the front door before midnight. Ridiculous. I told myself. I'd never lived anywhere I needed to worry about locking doors before bed. Still, I walked over and checked. The door was already locked, but for some reason, I twisted the bolt tighter anyway. I went upstairs, brushed my teeth, and paused in the hallway. The old mirror on the wall caught my reflection under the low lamplight. The glass shimmered slightly, just enough to make my reflection blink half a second slower than I did. I stepped closer, squinting. My own tired eyes stared back. Nothing wrong, nothing weird, except when I turned away, I heard a faint click, like someone pressing a key on a typewriter. I looked back. The mirror was perfectly still. Maybe it was the pipes. Maybe it was the wind. That's what I told myself as I climbed into bed, heart thudding a little faster than usual. The house creaked again. A deep, slow groan that seemed to travel through the walls. I reached for my phone. 11:59 p.m. The second hand ticked once, twice, and then silence. Midnight. I didn't know it yet. But that was the moment the house started. Listening. Transition. The first rule will be tested that same night. It was like the house sighed when I turned the key. But that came later. The first night started. Like any other move-in evening. Half-empty boxes, takeout containers, and me telling myself I'd organize everything tomorrow. I stayed up late, trying to make the place feel less alien. Music played softly from my phone as I rearranged furniture, humming under my breath just to fill the silence. The rules were still taped inside the kitchen cabinet, mocking me every time I passed. I'd even snapped a picture of them to text a friend, joking that my new house came with a built-in ghost. She never replied, probably asleep. The clock on the oven blinked 11:54 when I finally decided to call it a night. My hands were sticky from unpacking cleaning supplies. The air smelled faintly like lemon and old wood. I was halfway up the stairs when I froze. Something had clicked. I turned back, eyes scanning the dark kitchen. One of the chairs had shifted slightly, not far, just a few inches from the table, like someone had gotten up in a hurry. I told myself I must have bumped it earlier. Then my phone buzzed with a low battery alert, the screen lighting up my face. 12:15 a.m. when I heard it. A faint, deliberate tapping against the glass door in the living room. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the wind, maybe a branch. But the night outside was dead still. I muted the music and listened. The tapping came again, a little harder this time. I walked toward it, my heart picking up speed. The moonlight spilled across the floor, illuminating the outline of the door. That's when I noticed the bottom edge, muddy footprints. They started just inside the threshold. I blinked, staring. The front door, the one I could have sworn I locked, was open by half an inch. Just enough for the night air to drift in. My throat went dry. I reached out slowly, fingers brushing the knob. It was ice cold, colder than metal should ever be. I pushed the door shut and slid the bolt home. The instant it clicked, the tapping stopped, not faded. Stopped. It was like flipping a switch. Then came the silence, deep, heavy, unnatural. My breathing sounded too loud. The hum of the fridge was gone. Even the crickets outside had gone quiet. Something creaked behind me. I spun around, scanning the room with my phone's flashlight. For a split second, the beam caught something tall and thin gliding past the hallway. Not walking, gliding. The shape moved just fast enough to make me question if I'd seen anything at all. Hello? My voice cracked. No answer. The phone camera was still on, shaking slightly in my hand. When I angled it toward the hallway, I thought I heard a whisper, faint, almost playful. The sound of breath without a mouth. Lock the door. I stumbled backward, the flashlight flickering. My foot landed in something wet. I looked down. More muddy prints, leading from the door I'd just locked, snaking across the floor in uneven steps, and ending right behind where I stood. I froze. For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. Then, as if sensing my awareness, the air shifted. The lights flickered once, and I heard it again. A slow exhale. Right next to my ear. I spun, slamming into the wall so hard the picture frames rattled. The hallway was empty. The sound was gone, but I could feel it still. A faint vibration in the floorboards, a pulse through the air. I forced myself to move, locking the side door, the back door, even the windows. Each time I turned a bolt, the tension seemed to ease just slightly, like the house was releasing pressure. By the time I reached the living room again, the silence felt normal. That's when it happened. The sigh. A deep, almost human exhale that rippled through the house as I twisted the final lock. Every creak, every hum, every whisper seemed to breathe out at once. Then, nothing. The fridge buzzed back to life. The heater clicked on. Outside, the wind picked up again. It was as if everything had been paused, waiting for that single motion. I laughed shakily, trying to calm myself. Maybe it was my imagination. A mix of exhaustion, new house noises, and paranoia. I even checked my phone's camera feed, half expecting to see nothing but static, but the video had recorded, and for 5 seconds before I turned the lock, the camera had caught something standing in the reflection of the glass. Behind me. No features. No face. Just a shape darker than the night outside. I didn't sleep much after that. In the morning, I told myself I'd imagined it all, that it was just nerves from moving. But when I walked into the kitchen, the muddy footprints were still there. They led from the front door, across the hallway, and stopped right in front of the basement door. Transition. The next morning, they noticed the footprints lead to the basement door and stop there. I thought I imagined the voice, until it said my name. For days, I tried to ignore the basement door, tried to convince myself the footprints ending there meant nothing. Maybe I'd tracked mud in without noticing. Maybe the door was warped, the floor uneven. Maybe 1,000 things, none of which I actually believed. The door itself was old, older than the rest of the house. Heavy oak, paint peeling in long vertical strips like dried skin. No knob, just a brass latch, tarnished green with age. When I pressed my ear against it, I expected silence. What I heard was breathing, not steady, not human, just a slow, rhythmic pulse of air, as if the house itself was exhaling through a throat full of dust. I jerked back so fast I almost fell. My heart was pounding. I told myself it was airflow, pipes, temperature changes, anything to explain the sound. But once you hear something breathe back, you can't unhear it. That night, I propped a chair under the latch. I didn't know what I thought it would do. Keep something out? Keep me from opening it? Either way, I slept with my bedroom door locked and the lights on. By morning, the chair had shifted. Not knocked over, just moved an inch or two away from the frame. As if something had tried the door from the other side that I didn't eat that day. Just sat at the table, staring at the basement entrance like it might blink. Every creak of the house made me flinch. By sunset, I'd made up my mind. I needed proof that I still had the camera I'd used to record the front door. I set it up on a tripod across the kitchen, pointing straight at the basement. The red recording light blinked like a heartbeat in the dark. I left it running overnight. When I woke up, the first thing I did was check the footage. The timestamp rolled forward in silence. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., nothing but stillness. Then, at 2:46, the image flickered, the latch twitched. Once, twice. Slowly, the door creaked open, just an inch, enough to cast a shadow on the floor. Then it froze. Seconds passed. The video's audio picked up a faint scrape, like fabric brushing wood. And then the whisper, "You left me here." For words. Clear, deliberate. I paused the footage. Heart pounding in my throat. Rewound. Played it again, turning the volume up. "You left me here." The voice was genderless, old, thin as paper. I slammed the laptop shut. That sound wasn't coming from the basement. It was inside my head now, looping with every breath I took. The next night, I dreamt of a narrow staircase descending into nothing, lined with mirrors that reflected versions of me that didn't blink. When I woke, my sheets were damp with sweat. The air smelled faintly of soil that I wanted to leave. I swear I did. But something about that door held me there. Curiosity, obsession, maybe both. I told myself I'd open it just a crack, just to prove there was nothing there. But every time I reached for the latch, the air on the other side felt heavier, as if the door were breathing against my hand. That evening, while making coffee, I heard it again, the whisper. This time, not from the camera, not from a dream, from behind the door. "You left me here." I froze mid-step. The mug slipped from my fingers and shattered across the floor. Coffee splashed over my feet, but I barely felt it. The voice was softer now, almost pleading. "You left me here. Please." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. "Who are you?" No answer. Just breathing. I stood there for what felt like an hour, until the sound faded. When I finally dared to move, I pressed my ear against the door one last time. Silence. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe sleep deprivation was getting to me. That's what I told myself when I grabbed duct tape and sealed the edges of the door shut. But that night, around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of metal straining. The latch.it was rattling. Slow, deliberate, like a hand testing its strength. I sat up, holding my breath. The walls trembled with each metallic jolt. Then, one final, violent shake that made the whole frame groan. And just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. The house went silent again. But the mirror at the end of the hallway shimmered faintly in the dark, like something had moved inside it. Transition, one night. The basement door rattles violently, and the mirror rule is about to be tested next. When I broke the mirror, it laughed, but not from my side. For a while, I convinced myself I'd imagined it. The rattling basement door, the whispers, the faint movements in the corners of my eyes. It was all stress, lack of sleep, leftover city paranoia, clinging to me like smoke. But deep down, I knew the house wasn't done with me. The mirror rule had been easy to ignore at first. Don't talk to the man in the hallway mirror after 3 a.m. I'd laughed when I read it. It felt like something from a bad chain email. Share this or die in 7 days. But after the basement started whispering my name, I stopped laughing. That night, I couldn't sleep. The wind outside howled like it was circling the house, looking for a way in. Every shadow felt too still. I sat in the hallway, staring at the mirror, the tall, oval one bolted to the wall opposite the basement door. Its frame was ornate, carved with twisting vines and faces that only looked human if you didn't stare too long. The digital clock on the microwave blinked 2:59 a.m. I told myself I'd just watch. Nothing more. Just make sure nothing happened. Then, at 3 o'clock, the house exhaled again. It was subtle. A creak in the ceiling, the faint shift of air pressure, but enough to make the hairs on my neck rise. The mirror's surface rippled, as if someone had dropped a stone into it. I leaned closer. My reflection blinked a second too late. I froze. Slowly raised my hand. My reflection followed, almost. Its hand moved, but not quite in sync. A fraction slower. A fraction wrong. I whispered, "What are you?" The reflection smiled, and that smile wasn't mine. "You're learning the rules," it said. The voice came from the mirror, not the room. It wasn't loud, but it filled every inch of the hallway, vibrating in my bones. I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. The reflection didn't move. It just stood there, smiling, head tilted like it was studying me. "Who are you?" I managed to choke out. The grin widened. "You read them, didn't you?" My little list. I shook my head. The rules? You wrote them. The reflection chuckled. The sound was familiar, wrong in the way your own voice sounds on a recording. Just enough to make you want to claw your ears off. Someone had to keep order, it said. The house gets lonely when people forget. My stomach dropped. Forget what? The reflection leaned closer until its forehead pressed against the glass from the inside. The surface frosted where it touched, like the cold spreading from a corpse. Who built it? Who stayed? Who never left? I stepped backward until I hit the wall. My reflection stayed against the glass, but its hand began to rise again, slow, deliberate. I realized with dawning horror that it wasn't following me. It was reaching for me, its palm pressed flat against the inside of the mirror. The surface shimmered, warping, the air humming with static. My reflection's fingers started to push through. I screamed and grabbed the first thing I could find, a heavy candle holder from the shelf. Without thinking, I swung. The mirror shattered. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then, laughter, not from the room, from the shards. A low, delighted sound, echoing from each piece like the mirror was still alive in fragments. I stumbled back, staring at the floor. My reflection, no, the thing, was still there. In every shard, dozens of tiny versions of it, grinning up at me from impossible angles. Break the rules, they whispered together, overlapping in perfect, mocking harmony. You belong here now. I dropped the candle holder and ran to the living room, gasping. The sound followed me, 1,000 glassy whispers crawling across the floorboards. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't move until sunlight spilled through the windows. Weak but real. When I finally dared to go back into the hallway, the glass was gone. Every shard. The floor was spotless, the air unnervingly still. For a moment, I thought maybe the house had cleaned itself. Maybe I'd finally lost it. Then I saw the mirror frame, still bolted to the wall, still gleaming faintly. But inside it, no glass. Just a dark, rippling surface, like water. When I leaned closer, I could swear I saw something move in the reflectionless void. I backed away and didn't go near it for the rest of the day. I spent hours sitting in the kitchen, trying to rationalize, trying to breathe. But my thoughts kept circling the same question. If the mirror thing wrote the rules, then why warn me at all? Why leave instructions? Maybe it wasn't warning me. Maybe it was claiming me, one rule at a time. When dusk fell, the air grew cold again. The house felt heavier, like it was sinking. I tried not to look at the mirror, but my eyes kept drifting to the empty frame. It pulsed faintly, as if aware I was watching BY Midnight. I couldn't take it anymore. I covered the frame with a bedsheet and nailed it in place. When I finally sat down, exhausted, I noticed something on the floor where the mirror shards had been. Tiny pieces of glass, rearranged in a neat, deliberate line. 4 words spelled out in shimmering fragments. Rule for next. Transition. The next day, the mirror shards rearranged themselves to form a message. Rule for next. I saw me staring down at me. It started on a quiet night. Too quiet. In that way only old houses can manage. I'd convinced myself things had calmed down since the mirror. I'd covered the frame with a blanket and duct taped the edges for good measure. The whispers had stopped. Even the basement door had gone still. For the first time in weeks, I felt almost normal. I made popcorn, turned on the TV, and tried to pretend I wasn't living in a haunted museum. The laughter from the sitcom felt thin and fake, but it filled the silence. I told myself I'd get used to it. People adjust to worse things all the time. Then I heard it. A soft creak above me. I muted the TV. The sound stopped. I waited, straining to listen. Every muscle tight. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator. I exhaled and leaned back. Then it came again. Step. Slow. Heavy. Right above me. My stomach turned to ice. The memory of Rule 4 hit me like a slap. If you hear footsteps upstairs while you're downstairs, leave immediately. I laughed nervously. Old house, I whispered to myself. Wood expands. Wind shifts. But even as I said it, the footsteps came again, this time moving. Step. 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 They were crossing the upstairs hallway. I could picture the ceiling map in my head, matching the sound to each room. Whoever, or whatever it was, they were heading toward the top of the stairs. I stood up slowly, every instinct screaming that I needed to leave. But logic pushed back. It could be an animal, a loose vent. Hell, maybe a squatter. Hello? My voice cracked. Is someone up there? Silence. Then, all at once, the footsteps ran. They thundered toward the staircase so violently that the ceiling light flickered. I dropped the remote. My pulse was so loud I couldn't hear anything else. I didn't wait. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys and bolted for the front door. Behind me, the first thud hit. Someone, slammed into the wall at the top of the stairs. The drywall groaned. Another thud. Closer. I yanked the door open just as a shadow broke from the landing. For a split second, I saw a movement, human-shaped, wrong in the way reflections are wrong. I ran into the driveway barefoot, the cold concrete biting at my skin. My car sat under the flickering streetlight, its shape warped by the dew. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking so violently I dropped them twice before finally getting the door open. The instant I shut myself inside, something slammed against the house door behind me. Once, twice, then a long, scraping drag like fingernails over wood. I locked the car and pressed myself against the seat, staring at the house. The living room light glowed softly through the window. The curtains shifted as if stirred by a breeze. Then I saw it in the upstairs window. Directly above where I'd been sitting, someone stood. Not just someone. Me. Same clothes. Same hair. Same stunned expression. But my double was pale, chalk white, eyes black and depthless, mouth slightly open as if whispering something I couldn't hear. It lifted a hand and pressed it against the glass. I did the same, almost without realizing it. For a second, we mirrored each other perfectly. Then its lips moved. I couldn't hear the words, but I could read them. Too late. I froze. Then the window went dark, like the light inside had been swallowed whole. I stayed in the car all night, engine off, gripping the steering wheel until dawn. Every so often, I swore I heard faint footsteps circling the house, slow and deliberate, like it was waiting for me to come back inside. When the sun finally rose, the air felt lighter again, empty, as if whatever had been inside the house had burned away with the night. I forced myself to go back in. The living room was exactly as I'd left it. The bowl of popcorn sat half-eaten on the coffee table. The TV was frozen on a laugh track loop. But upstairs, the footprints were there. Bare, wet, and unmistakably mine. They led from the top of the stairs to the hallway mirror frame. Only the frame was gone. So was the blanket. So was the mirror. In its place, taped neatly to the wall, was a single piece of paper, new, white, and freshly typed. The rules only this time. There were more of them, and the first one had changed. Transition. They return in daylight. The mirror is gone. The rules are gone too, replaced with new ones. It wasn't trying to haunt me. It was trying to replace me. The paper looked brand new, white, crisp, and cold to the touch. No dust, no tape residue, like it had simply appeared overnight. I didn't want to touch it, but I couldn't stop myself. My fingers shook as I peeled it from the wall. At the top. In bold letters, it read, "The RES only this time." There were 7 of them. The first line froze me where I stood. Point 1. Do not look at your reflection outside this house. I scanned the rest. Heart pounding harder with each word. Point 2. If you see the old you, do not approach. 3. Never trust anyone who knocks more than twice. 4. If you hear breathing through the phone, hang up. Point 5. The basement door will open soon. Be ready. 6. You can still leave, but it will follow. 7. Breaking any rule means you belong to the house. They weren't just rules anymore. They were updates. The list had evolved, like the house had been watching, taking notes on everything I'd done wrong. I dropped the paper and stumbled back. The kitchen felt smaller, suffocating. The walls seemed closer than before. Outside, sunlight reflected off my car windshield, flashing into my eyes. For a moment, I saw a movement, a flicker of something in the glass. I turned, shielding my face. But when I looked back, my reflection was still there, staring from the driver's seat. It was me. But not. The smile came first. Too wide. Too knowing. It raised a hand. Late, like the mirror version before. But this time, it didn't stop. It mimed unlocking the car door. I ran to the window, heart hammering. The reflection's face shifted slightly, like static crawling over skin. I blinked, and it was gone. I backed away slowly. My breath fogged the glass, even though the air wasn't cold. I whispered, "What do you want from me?" The house creaked in response, low and guttural, like something breathing through the walls. For the rest of the day, Every surface became suspect. I avoided windows, turned off my phone camera, even covered the chrome handles on the cabinets. Still, I caught glimpses, tiny flashes of movement, each one just a heartbeat too late to be mine. When night came, I sat in the living room with all the lights on, holding the rule sheet in my lap like a map out of hell. The words seemed different now, the ink darker, and the fifth line, about the basement door, had started to fade at the edges, as though the paper itself was rewriting. That's when it hit me. The house wasn't haunted. It was adaptive. It was learning me, studying how I reacted, what I ignored, what I feared. Each rule wasn't a warning. It was a script, training me to behave, to fit into its design. And if it was rewriting the rules, that meant it was rewriting reality that I had to get out. At dawn, I packed everything I could into my car, clothes, laptop, even the rule sheet. I didn't look in the rearview mirror once. My eyes stayed fixed on the road. The town was only a few miles away. I just needed to find the realtor, hand over the keys, and be done with it. When I reached Main Street, it was empty. The realtor's office door hung open, the blinds swaying in the morning breeze. Inside, dust covered everything: phones, desks, chairs. But the lights were on, humming softly. That's when I saw the sign in the window. A big, glossy for sale poster. It showed my house, and under the contact section was a smiling headshot. Mine, same clothes, same angle, same too wide smile. The phone number below was my own. Transition. They try to sell the house, but the realtor's office is abandoned, and their own face is on the for sale poster. She didn't ask me to run. She asked me to look closely at my reflection and see who was winning. I found Mabel on a sagging porch 2 streets over, quilt on her knees, radio whispering old songs. The realtor had mentioned her. I'd never met the neighbors until I needed answers. She smelled of lavender and pennies, and her eyes were the kind that had seen too many people come through that house. When I told her I wanted to sell, she snorted. "You can't sell what doesn't want to be sold," she said. "It shows up, people move in, and one night they stop coming out. Then the house is gone from where it stood and a new one sits in its place. But someone else is already living there. If you look in windows, you can sometimes see the ones it kept, pressed to the glass like pictures." She told me about her son, Tommy. He'd been 15 when local kids dared him to check the old place. He never returned. Weeks later, she saw him standing in a shop window downtown, his face pale and still, eyes open but not seeing. She touched the glass. It was icy, as if the cold belonged to something that wasn't quite alive. "They don't die," she said. "They become part of the house's picture. It keeps a reflection of them until there's nothing left but the copy." She took a yellowed scrap from her pocket and smoothed it out. It was the same typewriter font as my rules. "We pass these down," she said. "Old tricks to slow it down. Salt, burning photos, leaving doors open at odd hours. Little acts of defiance. But it's patient. It learns." I asked flatly, "Why the rules? Why warn people at all?" Mabel's eyes went distant. "Why warn? Maybe because it likes the game. Maybe because the rules make you obedient. You do what it expects until you stop trying to leave. The rules shape you. You start to follow them. And while you're busy following, it learns how to be you." She leaned in and whispered, so that even the radio seemed to hush. "The house doesn't want you gone. It wants you back in the glass." That line lodged in my chest. The neighbor's porch receded as I walked back, the town folding itself between me and the house. I thought of those faces in windows, of my own pale double pressing at glass. For the first time, I felt small in a way that wasn't about property or money. It was about continuity, about someone else taking over the place I lived in my life. When I went home, I sat with the rule sheet until my knees ached. The thought came like a fever. If the house kept people by copying them, perhaps the only solution was to undo its copies. Fire was cruel logic, the ultimate eraser. Burn the house and drag whatever lurked in the walls into light, and it was reckless. It was brutal, but action felt better than waiting. I folded the paper and slipped it into my pocket. Outside, the house stood quiet, like a thing that could hear my heartbeat from across the lawn. 2 days later, I bought lighter fluid, my hands trembling badly. When the fire died, my reflection didn't. I remember the smell first, sharp and chemical. Gasoline soaked deep into the carpet like it was thirsty for it. Every room shimmered with fumes, a ghost of vapor rising in the air. The house was too quiet, as if it were holding its breath, listening to me move from room to room. "This is how you end things," I muttered. My voice sounded strange, thinner than usual, as if the walls were stealing the strength out of it. I splashed the last of the fuel across the hallway mirror frame. The wood darkened instantly, the metal nails hissing. My hands shook when I struck the lighter. For a second, nothing happened. Then the flame bloomed to life, small, innocent, almost gentle when it touched the gasoline. The house exhaled. The fire spread too fast, racing across the floorboards, crawling up the walls like it had been waiting. The heat pressed at my skin, but I couldn't move. I should have run, but part of me needed to see that as the flames reached the living room. I saw movement through the smoke. The windows glowed, bright and alive, and in them, something stirred. Each pane reflected not fire, but memories. There I was, carrying boxes on the first day, laughing at how cheap the house was. Another window showed me sitting on the floor eating takeout, talking to no one. Then a third, me screaming in the hallway, swinging a candle holder into a mirror, except this time, the reflection didn't break. Each window warped, stretching my face into grotesque versions, smiling, crying, burning. I stumbled backward as laughter rose from the flames, soft at first, then loud enough to drown out the crackle that it wasn't mocking. It was joyful. The walls pulsed, the beams groaned. Something inside the fire moved, walking, deliberate, human. A figure stepped through the inferno that he looked like me. Perfectly. No burns, no wounds, not even smoke on his clothes. His eyes gleamed like glass catching firelight, and his mouth curved into that same too-wide grin I'd seen in every reflection. He stopped a few feet away, and even though the air shimmered with heat, I could feel his breath. "Now we both own the house," he whispered. His voice was mine, but deeper, layered, like two versions speaking in unison. The flames around us roared higher. I coughed, choking on smoke, but he just stood there, unblinking. I took a step back. He mirrored it, not like a reflection, delayed, deliberate. "You can't burn what's inside you," he said. The ceiling cracked. A beam fell, showering sparks between us. He didn't flinch. I turned and ran for the door. Behind me, his laughter followed, echoing, climbing, until it sounded like 100 voices all overlapping. Outside, the night was alive with orange light. I stumbled into the yard, the gasoline can slipping from my hands. Flames clawed at the roof. The windows exploded one by one, and yet, it felt wrong. The fire didn't sound like destruction. It sounded like breathing. Every time a window burst, I saw flashes, faces pressed against glass, pale and still, screaming without sound. Mabel's boy, the realtor, dozens more. And in the final window, right before it shattered, I saw myself. Not the me standing in the yard, the other me, smiling inside, as the fire washed over him. Then the explosion hit that I woke hours later on the grass, coughing, eyes raw from smoke. The house was gone, nothing but a blackened skeleton. The dawn was pale, quiet, innocent, for the first time in weeks. I thought I was free. I drove away without looking back, without stopping until the skyline shifted, until the sign said I was miles from Ohio. That night, I collapsed into my own bed in my apartment, dizzy with exhaustion, soot still under my nails. When I woke the next morning, I opened the curtains just to let in some light. Outside my window, under a gray sky, sat the same cul-de-sac, the same mailbox, the same burned-down house. Waiting. Transition. Narrator wakes up the next morning in their apartment, but the view outside is the same Ohio street. If you're hearing this, it's already watching you. I woke up to sunlight. That warm, gentle Ohio sunlight spilling through the curtains. For one quiet second, I believed everything had been a nightmare, a grotesque hallucination carved out of exhaustion and paranoia. But then I smelled it, that faint, sweet rot beneath the air freshener, that same hum from the refrigerator, and when I turned my head, I saw it, the list of rules, still taped to the fridge door. Fresh ink. The paper wasn't scorched or curled, just new. Rule number 1, never leave a mirror uncovered at night. Rule number 2, if you hear knocking, don't answer. Rule number 3, do not trust your reflection. I stumbled back, my pulse pounding in my throat. I looked around, the same crooked picture frame, the same coffee mug with the chipped handle. Even the floorboard I'd broken last week was perfectly intact. I was back. Not like I was back. I was. The clock on the wall blinked 7:04 a.m., just like the first morning I'd ever spent here. Outside, the sky was the same color, a soft, washed-out blue. A bird chirped. A car door slammed in the distance. Reality had folded that I didn't know how long I stood there before I realized the phone on the counter was recording. I must have turned it on during the chaos, trying to document something, anything. The red light blinked patiently, waiting for me to speak. So I did that. If you're hearing this, it means the story didn't stay buried. It found a way out. Maybe you saw the post online. Maybe it was a video. Maybe someone forwarded it, said, "You have to listen to this creepy story. I need you to understand something. This isn't a story. Not anymore. The house doesn't haunt people. It spreads. Every time someone watches, listens, or even imagines it, the rules rewrite themselves somewhere new. Maybe that's how it keeps growing, by finding more eyes to look into. The first time I ignored the knocking, it stopped. The second time, it waited until I slept. The third time, it came through the reflection. I walked over to the window. The street outside was quiet, perfectly still. The mailbox still had my name on it. Only now, there were more houses. I swear there hadn't been that many before. And in each one, I could see faint figures standing behind the glass. Faces that looked familiar. Faces that looked like me. I wanted to scream, to shatter every mirror, every surface that could reflect light. But what's the point? Every window, every phone screen, every puddle, it's all connected now. I'll say this instead, that if you're watching this video, listening to this recording, reading this transcript, whatever form it's taken, don't look into any mirrors tonight. Don't check your reflection in your phone. Don't glance into dark windows. And if you see movement behind you, pretend you didn't. The house doesn't just want occupants. It wants witnesses. It's rewriting itself through the act of being seen. Somewhere, someone is hearing this for the first time, and their reflection is already leaning closer. I can hear it now. The tapping, slow, deliberate. 3 knocks against the front door, just like before. I'm not going to answer. Not this time. Maybe that's the trick, to make it wait. But the rules are changing again. I can see new words bleeding through the old ink on the fridge. The letters crawl across the page as if they know I'm reading. Whatever you do, don't look behind you. End of story. Cyclical, meta, and self-perpetuating horror.